Welcome back, Strong Long fans. Uh-oh, it's the master of the Lunerboonies. You know what that means. Turns out the master's real name is Mr. Lakey. This episode's gonna open with him on planet Lunerboon. And then here comes, we see 4 of his Lunerboonies. We see these fellers. That's when we see the yellow one show up saying, or no. Yeah, these ones comes later in the episode. I'll make up one that comes back. I'll find a different creature. Let's see, let me find one. That's when we see this pink one. You could just call her let's see, we could call her the Roaster. And yeah, she tells the master that she just got hit by a statue. She said, I was just hit by a statue. And then that's when we see the master say, ah, man, was it Fango? And then she says, yes, it was Fango. And then the master's like, well, that ain't very well done. Fango needs to be destroyed once and for all. See? Told you he's doing evil stuff. He's got some pretty darn evil ideas. Yep. We could call it. Yeah, this thing's called the Roaster. She actually, her eyes are like she's got like laser eyes that can like melt things. And then the master looks on his monitor. He says, let me look on the cameras, and then he watches on the monitor and he watches the statue hit her. She says, ow, what's the matter with you? Actually, let's say this is a male Lunerboonie. And then that's when we see, and the master says, poor dude, you got a black eye. Here, let me get you. And the master is like, and that's when we see master say, I think it's time we send the next Lunerboonies. Yeah, as he's watching the monitor, she's saying, no, don't throw that. And then we see Fango throw it at her, or at him. Then he gets hit. He says, ow, my eye! He says, ow, my eye! And Fango's like, I'm getting it! He says, ow, I'm going home! That's when he says, woo! And we see the mecha suit he points his fists up in the air and it shoots, and then there's these cannons that comes out of the sides of its wrists, and then they shoot out fireworks. Like he's like cheering for himself for defeating the Lunerboonie. He says, ah, and then the master's like, well, now it's time to send I guess we're gonna send the Grimlows. And then that's when he sends the Grimlows. Yep, the no-eyed girls. And that's when we cut to Fango at his house. And he's sleeping in his bed. Cause, well, this is actually morning time. Like the time he was recording the Roaster getting hit by the statue was actually the day before this time. Yeah, you'll see that Fango, like, hacker rings the doorbell. And then we see that Fango says, yeah. That's when we see her, like, well, actually, I think the truth is they actually cut to a newer time is that while she returns, we just cut to a newer time. That's when he sends Grim, and then the hacker rings the doorbell and tells Fango that there's Lunerboonies attacking 3 cities. They're Grimlows. One's attacking Green Ridge, one's attacking Penford, and one's attacking Fort Stone. He says, "Alright, it's time!" And he gets in this crazy. He gets in this mecha suit. And it's like a samurai-looking mecha suit. Well, it's just like a giant robot with swords, and then... And he says, "I'm gonna kick those monsters' butts." And then he sees the first one, ends up with the first one. We see that their powers, they can just vandalize property. He says, "Hey, you're not destroying the city, you're drawing all over it." He says, "You're just coloring all over it." He says, "But I'm gonna poke your eyes out with this antenna." And then he's approaching her, and then once the Grimlow turns around and roars, he says, "Whoa!" And he says, "Wait a second. I can't poke out your eyes. You don't even have eyes." She writes on a building, says, "Even though I don't have eyes," she tells, the message tells Fang. She writes something, she writes her dialogues to communicate with Fango, and that's when she doesn't really talk, she just writes her dialogues to communicate. So, and we see it say, it says that she can see even without eyes. That's when Fango realizes that her eyes are probably invisible. And then, and that's when we see Fango, like, they start fighting. And then Fango knocks an office building onto her. Yeah, and we see the first building get knocked onto her, and that's an office building. And she's like, "Ah!" She tries to run, but she doesn't run fast enough, or she doesn't move fast enough, and it crushes her. And that's when we cut to. That's when we say, we see Fango says, "1 down, 2 to go." That's when Fango says. That's when he says, He says, "Now let's go take care of the one in Penford." Then he goes to Penford. That's when we see the Grimlow. Yeah, the one that you see in the middle was the one Fango was fighting. Now the one you see on the left is the one Fango's gonna fight next. And then when he arrives and that's when we cut to the Grimlow attacking Penford. He says, "It's another no-eyed girl." And then she hears Fango. She writes on a building that says, "I'm a Grimlow, that's what I am." And then Fango says, "Oh, you're a Grimlow. Was that girl in Green Ridge your sister?" And she writes the word "yes" on another building. She does it very quick, and then Fango's like, "Well," and she writes. Then she says, she actually says, "Yes, why?" He says, "Then that means she's a Grimlow too. Now you're next. So now I'm gonna get you." Then she attacks. She tries to attack Fango, but then he kicks her. And then she ends up under a hotel, and then Fango knocks the hotel onto her, and she's like, "Ah!" But yeah, she actually, like, she was like, and then she's like underneath it. She tries to get up at the hotel, but her head was like on the side, was like right up against the wall of the hotel, and she couldn't get up in time, and it ended up crushing her. Fango says, All right, one more to go. And then that's when he goes to Fort Stone. That's when, and that would be the one on the right that you see. And yeah, she's the one that Fango fights. She's the last one. Fango says, "I see what you're up to." He says, "Huh? You're going down." She says, "What are you talking about?" And he says, I just took down your two sisters." She says, or let's say Fango says, "I just took down your two sisters and you're next." And she writes, "What? How dare you?" She says, "Well, how dare you vandalize our town just so I could come and get ya?" She writes, "Oh yeah?" She draws an angry face above it and then attacks her. Fango says, "Not so fast, sweetheart." And then she's like, "What?" She writes on a building and she says, "Don't call me that. Am I your She says, "Am I your girlfriend? I don't think so." Or, I don't know what she should say. But yeah, she tells Fango is she his girlfriend or daughter and like, I don't know, or like wife, yeah, something like that. She says, "I don't think so." She's not like really asking it. She's just like telling, like, she's not like asking it. She's like telling him. It's like, and then Fango, she says, "Am I your girlfriend? I don't think so." And then she says, "The only thing you are is my enemy, or our enemy." She just does like a slash. It's like saying, "or our enemy." And then Fango says, "Oh yeah? How about you try this?" And then he pushes her into a hospital, and then he knocks the hospital onto her, and she's like, "Ah!" and then that's when Fango says, "Bullseye! Take that, you wicked Grimlow!" And that's when he tries to return home. That's when we zoom out and and find out that there was the master. There was a camera going live on the master's monitor. It was a live camera, and he was like saying, "What is this? What's going on? You are crazy." Sorry, I was getting a sip of my drink. But yeah, anyway, yeah, when Fango returns home, that's when he gets out and he says, Hacker says, "Wait! Fango!" We don't see that part yet. We gotta do the part where he says, "I guess I gotta look for," he says, "How am I gonna get rid of this Fango?" He says, "Aha!" Yep, he comes up with an idea. He says, "That's it! I'll look for the most special and strongest Lunerboonie." And then that's when we see and he says, that's when you see him walk up to, he comes to talk to the inspector. And he says, Hey, Mr. Lakey. Yup. he says, "Hey, Master Lakey, you need something?" He says, or he says, "Can I help you?" He says, "Yes, I need you to give me I need you to show me which Lunerboonie is the most special." Okay. I need a very special Lunerboonie. And then he says, "I'll find a girl for you." And that's when we see them go on a tour looking for a Lunerboonie to find. That's when they go to the Lunerboonie farm. They go to their farm and we see all these Lunerboonies. We see a yellow one, known as the Flyer. He says, "Hey, Flyer," and then the Flyer just waves at him, doesn't say anything. That's when we see this blue creature known as the Mouther. She's actually, you can see her eyes are in her mouth, which is kind of funny. And when he says hi to her, he says, "Hi, Mouther," and she says, "Oh, Master! Hey, hug me." She says, "Hug me," but she says, "Here, oh my gosh, I missed you, give me a hug." And then but the Master leaves, but he passes by her. He says, "See ya." She says, "Hey, see ya," and then she's like, "What?" She says, "Aw, man." And then she says, "He didn't even give me a hug." Aww. Yeah. She's poor Mouther. We see her cry a little bit. She puts her eyes back in her mouth. She sees her eyes can she's got like 2 tongues, but they're not like directly her tongues. Let's say she does have a tongue, maybe she's got like 3, but like the 2 extra ones has our eyes. Hold on. My dog's about to bark. And that's when we see the purple creature, known as the Roover. Yeah. She's got like spider eyes and squid tentacles, but she says. And then that's when the Master says, "Hey, Roover." She says, "Who said that? What do you want?" She says, "Oh, hey, Master." Yep. She also has like a snake's tongue. She's like, but she doesn't. I mean, she can hiss, but just not too snake-like. He says, that's when he said, "I came to see if you're good. Are you strong enough to defeat Fango? Or get rid of Fango?" Or he says, "Are you strong enough to destroy Fango?" Destroy? You mean that crazy mecha dude? You mean that crazy mecha suit dude who the other Lunerboonies has been fighting?" She says, "No way, I ain't going out there and dealing with that bozo. Because otherwise he's gonna traumatize me with one of his property. Or he's gonna traumatize me with some whatever property he's got. I can just tell how scary it is." And that's when we see, he says, "Well, okay. The only weapons I got are my tentacles, my teeth, and my claws. My claws can shoot out like missiles." Oh, let's say she can't say they shoot out like, she just shows what she can do. And this is what I can do with my claws. Watch it. They shoot out like missiles. Like, It actually ends up hitting another Lunerboonie. Let's say we don't see what happens to the Lunerboonie, we just see the Lunerboonie saying, "Ow! What was that?" And then we see her, that's when the rover says, "Sorry about that, I was just trying," or she says, that's what she said. And that's when the rover says, she says, "Sorry about that, I was just trying to show the master what I can do," and then that's when the other one just says, "It's okay. Your spikes aren't too poisonous, are they?" She says, "No, they're not. Not enough to affect a Lunerboonie." Or she says, "They're my claws, by the way. They're not." Or she says, "Your claws aren't too poisonous, are they?" She says, "No, they're not poisonous at all. It won't kill a Lunerboonie unless if it unless it stabs them through in the organs. Thank goodness I didn't stab her in any of the organs." She says, and then he says, "Well," that's when the master says, "Well, that's all you got." Yeah. She says, "I can also," yeah, and then we see them regrow. She says, "That's why I should be careful shooting be careful." She says, "I really do have to be careful where I shoot my missiles because I don't want to accidentally kill somebody." That's when he says, "Okay." That's when we cut to this orange creature known as the Striker. Yeah. Or we could just call her the Shocker because she's electrical. And we could just call it the Burn Shock, yeah. And then we see what she can do. After we see the master leave the rover says, "Okay, have fun." That's when we see that's when we cut to the Burn Shock, and she says, she just roars. She says, "Argh!" We see she's breathing fire, and she's got electrical horns. Oh yeah, and there's one scene I forgot to mention. It's for the Mouther, yeah, the blue creature. Yeah, the reason why I'm re-mentioning her is because I forgot one scene in it. And that, you see, now the red, I know we just know there's the roaster, but the red thing, yeah, she's called the Grabber. You can see she doesn't have a mouth. I mean, she does. She's got two mouths, but if you want to know, but you can't see them probably. Her mouths are on her hands. If you look at her hands, you'll see where her mouths are. Yeah, she's the one after the Mouther starts to cry. That's when we see the Grabber put her hands on her and tell her. It's actually like on the back of her hand, or it's actually like on the front of her hands. We see she says, "Oh, Mouther. Oh, Mouther." Or she says, "Oh, Mirtha. It's okay. He'll come back again. I'm sure he'll come back again soon." And then that's when you see her name is Martha. Yeah, the Mouther's name is Martha. We see the Grabber, she's trying to cheer her up, and that's when we see. And that's, yeah. And then that's when after we see that's when we cut back to that's when we get to the rover. But now we're on the Burn Shock. the burn shocks the orange creature. Her horns are electrical and she can breathe fire. And then the master says, he says, well, now this is a special girl. I can tell. She says, yeah. And then that's when the person next to him says, yes, but she is not the most special. And he says, really? And he says, yes. She is the next creature. There is 2 creatures that are the most special. That's when we see that's when we'll see the girl on this green one. The green one's known as the Scramper. She's like a giant. She's like another like reptile type creature. She's the Scramp, and she's the one who shows like a. And that's when we see the. Yeah, I could probably tell you what else the roaster can do. She's pretty, or he's the roaster's a male, but yeah. Well, we're on the green one now. This green lady, she's called the Scramper, and she says, "Geez, what?" That's when we see the roaster. We see the grabber with the roaster. Like, and we see that the roaster says, "I love you, that's sweetie." And that's when we see, and then the grabber says, "I love you too." Let's say they're both in a cage, and then that's when the Scramper grabs. She says, 2 special Lunerboonies coming up, and then she just like takes off and then carries the 2 like Lunerboonies over. And that's when we see who they are. Uh-oh. Here it comes. It's Girlzilla. What? Yep, she is crazy. And but she's not the only one. It's also Princess Tallymae. She's the real master of the Lunerboonies. She's the behemoth. She's the known as the Behemoth Princess, and that's when we see Mr. Lakey, that's his real name, the master of the Lunerboonies. He wasn't even the master. He's not even the master at all. Yeah. It's this girl. She's the master of the Lunerboonies. She's actually in charge of the Lunerboonies. She's the most special one. The master says, now we gotta send. Yeah, and that's when we see Girlzilla. He says, and he tells them that they have to send her to Earth. That's when but we don't show the part where she's being sent through the Dream Gate. So yeah, it's just gonna show. He said, and then the Mr. Lakey's gonna say, he says, she's gonna do it. She says, no, she can do it. And if she doesn't, and if Fango defeats her, then that's when we can send Princess Tallymae, the Behemoth Princess, the Behemoth lady, and I'm not gonna go, and I'm not gonna stay here while she fights Fango. I'm gonna go with her. Yeah, he makes a compromise. He says, if Girlzilla doesn't win against Fango like the other Lunerboonies haven't, then I can go with then I can send the Behemoth lady and go with her, so I can tell her so I can make sure and watch her surroundings. Yeah, he says, I can protect her very well. I can check her surroundings. And then that's when he says, now let's send our first Lunerboonie. And that's when Girlzilla gets sent through the dream gate. That's when Fango says, that's when Hacker says, Fango, you're not gonna believe. That's when we just cut to Fango watching TV with Dimey, Axel, and Austin. Hacker says, and then that's when Hacker, we see he's just a little bored. Fango says, uh-oh. Does that beep? Does that beeping sound mean the dream gate opened? And then Hacker says, well, he says, yup, it certainly does. Now it's time to get in my final mecha suit. It says, now let's get in a big, well, I'm gonna need, I don't know how strong this one is. Now let's get in one of my mecha suits. Wait, you're gonna need a pretty strong mecha suit, man. Why? It says, this one is a very strong Lunerboonie. It says, wait, what? We can see that Fango's mortified, and after we see Fango get mortified, we cut to a cargo carrier. In a storm, we see Captain Bard. The purple guy. He was in the Alien episode. He's like, what? The Alien episode where, yeah, the girls are, like, yeah, he was like the Alien Girls episode, but he's in this episode. We see that he's singing himself like a sailor song. He says, I am just sailing right through a storm. I am just sailing right through a storm. I think it's fun to sail right through a storm. I like to have fun sailing right through a storm. And then that's when his sonar starts beeping. He says, huh? What's that? He says, oh no. Yeah, we see he's trying to get to the Semi-Truck City Harbor. And that's when, but yeah, he says, I'm trying to get to the Semi-Truck City Harbor. It's only a few more miles. Or let's say he got startled by a lightning strike. He says, jeez. Well, that wasn't very comfortable. That's when he says, only still a few more miles away from Semi-Truck City. I still gotta get there. I gotta get to the harbor so I can drop off these containers. That's when we see, and that's when we see this happen. Just, wait a minute. Said Fang. Oh, no, wait a minute. That's when we hear the sonar beep. It goes like, beep, huh? It's spinning. He says, uh-oh. What does that mean? He says, he just realizes, we see that Girlzilla's on the sonar. He sounds the alarm, and then he announces on the intercom. He says, this is your captain speaking. We got a large object heading right for our ship. He says, and it is not a boat or a submarine. I'm telling you. I repeat, this. Or oh no, he doesn't say I repeat. He says, this is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. There is something big heading right for us. He says, there is something big heading right for our ship. And then he says, and then that's when we see the ship get people. Then he says, And then that's when we see Girlzilla hit the ship, and then everyone goes like, "Whoa!" Same with Captain Marvel. Goes like, "Ah!" We see that the ship was hit, and then they wake up to see what happened. He says, "What was that?" And they hear like strange growling sounds in the storm. He says, And then that's all of a sudden we see claws burst through the walls. We see her claws burst through the walls of the ship, and we see her capsize the ship and sink it. He says, and that's when he announces on the intercom. He says, "Everybody, get to the lifeboats!" Yeah, they get to the emergency evacuation lifeboats. And they zoom off. And then Girlzilla's like, "Ha ha! Don't come back!" Or no, she doesn't say anything. We just see that she just sunk the ship. And then she's laughing, and that's when we see that the storm is already over. And that's when we can see, like, after she sinks the ship, we can see that it stops raining. Or, yeah, let's say it stops raining. I mean, the clouds we don't see sunlight yet. We just, first thing that happens, the thunder and lightning stops. And then we see her carry the, we see her carry the cargo ship to the shore. Or let's say she just doesn't really carry it. She just drops it off and and that's, we see the, water, well, not the water, we just see all the cargo containers fall off the ship as she's destroying it. But yeah, after we see her attack the ship, we see that it's badly damaged. It couldn't, really be sunk. Well, I mean, we just see that it gets capsized. So, And that's when we see it. That's when we see we see her, we see her continuing her trip. She's like, what a love. But she doesn't say anything. She just goes, and we see that the rain stops. The storm's over. Well, in the area they're in. We see that the storm is, let's say the storm is heading south, and she's going she's going west towards Semi-Truck City. She says, "Night." That's when we see her. That's when we see, that's when we cut to our, 7 characters. That would be Lance, Bentley, Scallon, and Baker, and Doran, and Charlie and Grummet. See? So yeah, Now Lance, Bentley, and Scallon are they're alien creatures, and Baker and Doran, they're 2 human strong long characters, and and that's when we see Charlie and Grummet. Charlie's a cow and Grummet's a crocodile. Yeah, and that's when we see them say, and then they're that's when we see, Fangy. Oh, we don't see Fangy. We see them just talking to each other at the harbor. That's when we see one of our strong ones, who's an arrow. His name is Parker. He says, "I'm gonna go fishing." And that's when we see Lance say, "Okay, Parker, have fun." Well, let's say they weren't really talking to each other. They were just doing their job. And we see our character, Parker, who's a fisherman. He's actually an arrow. Strong one. A walking, talking arrow who's a fisherman. And then we see him go. Also, we see Gromit say, "Oh, and also," that's when or let's say Charlie says it. He says, "Hey, Parker, can you fish over there on the deck instead of like right here where we work?" He says, "Okay, I will." That's when he fishes on the deck, and that's when we see the people arrive on the deck. We see Captain Bard. He says, "Oh, what's that?" We see he's riding on a lifeboat, and that's when he's like, "What the heck?" He says, "You don't want to go out there. You don't want to know what's out there. We were just attacked by a huge creature." He says, "What do you mean?" He says, "What do you mean?" "I recommend you wouldn't be fishing here, man. I recommend you fish on the west coast of Strong Lungs." He says, "But that's too far, man. Only place to be fishing right now is right here." Oh. He says, "Yeah, well, but there's a creature that's gonna," and he says, "Okay, fine." And that's when we see him. He says, "Whoa!" And after Captain Bard and his crew leaves, like they get out of the lifeboat, they leave to tell the tale. We see that Parker is still fishing, and then that's when we see something grab his fishing rod hook. He says, "Whoa! Yo, guys, I caught a fish!" He says, "Oh!" It's pulling on his fish is pulling on his hook really hard. "Man, this is a big one." Turns out it's not a fish, it's Girlzilla. And it's pulling the fishing rod. He says, "I can't hold it much longer. Hold on, let me." Whoa! And then the fishing rod gets pulled into the water, and then Captain Bard says, "I told ya." Yep. Before he could tell the tale, he just notices the creature. He says, "I told ya." And that's when we see Girlzilla approaching. Or let's say there's like this current she's breathing in, trying to eat fish. Let's say before we cut to the dude's fishing rod being pulled, we see that she's breathing in and it's pulling it's pulling Parker's fishing rod hook. And she ends up grabbing it. And he's like, yeah, it turns out this is pulling on his fishing rod very hard. It's like, ugh! But yeah, he ends up getting his fishing rod pulled into the water. And that's when we see Girlzilla comes out of the water and attacks. She says, she doesn't say anything. Sorry, I keep making her like trying to say something, but I keep changing my mind. She roars and everybody's like, "Ah!" And first thing she uses is her energy, and you're like, "Wah! Ah!" Yeah. And then we see that she's and she roars. Her roars are so destructive, they're just causing chaos. or it's not the roars that are causing it. It's her energy beam that's causing it. And that's when we see Fango say, we see he gets in a very strong mecha suit. He says, and then she says, "Whoa!" She says, "Are you a? I don't think you're a Lunerboonie." Or she doesn't say that. She's like, "Huh?" Or yeah, she's just like, "I don't think that's a Lunerboonie." And she's like, and that's when we see, Fango say, "Don't go thinking this is one of your friends. I'm parts of Strong Lungs. I'm affiliated with the Strong Lungs, not the Lunerboonies." That's when we see him. We see she tries to attack. And then when she hears what Fango says, but Fango has like a rocket fist. It's like then it hits that's when we see it hit the Lunerboonie. Yeah, she's like, "Argh!" And then Fango tries to do it again and he tries to do it again, and or let's say he uses his, that's when the fists opens up, like the rockets comes, like the sides and the top and the bottom of the wrist, like open, like there's like these rockets that comes out of it, and then or let's say the rocket opens out of his arm, and then he like the sides and the top and the bottom of his arm is like, and then he hits the creature, and that's when we see his strong mecha suit. And that's when we see, like, and this is like where Fango, like, he attacks her, and and then he points both fists at her, and then the fists opens up, and then we see rockets come out of them, and then they go, they hit Girlzilla. She's like, "You're not gonna stop me that easy." Or let's say there were actually like 3 naval cannons, and like we see like these cannons rather than rockets. We see like the fist opens up, and we see these cannons shoots at her, and that's when we see we see the robot like shoots her, and then that's when we see the robot spreads its arms out, and then that's when we see the arms opens up, and we see rockets, like the sides of the arms opens up, and then that's when we see rockets come out of, we see like rockets come out of the mecha suit's arms. Probably there was like a rock, like let's say the rocket fist, like there was like a rocket on the top and the bottom of the arm, because I want like rockets to come out the side of the arms. Well, only like the front, like only the sides, like that comes out, like the sides that points in front of him. Yeah, and then the rocket shoots at the lunar. It hits Girlzilla, and she goes like, "Ugh!" And then she that's when he uses his laser eyes. You see he's got laser eyes, and we see that they shoot at her. but doesn't do very well. Good damage. And we can see that. That's when we see the mouth of the mecha suit opens, and its mouth opens, and we see and we see this energy beam cannon, this huge energy cannon, and it shoots. That's when it fires at her, and we see that it goes like and shoots her. She's like and then it hits her, and she can't. And she uses her energy beam. They shoot each other. They're like ah. That's when it. And as they're trying to, as they're shooting at each other's, or like shooting at each other's energy beam, that creates this big orb, and then creates a huge explosion, which knocks over, or creates a huge shockwave that knocks over Girlzilla, but doesn't knock over Fango, but it just pushes him across the ground. He says, well. She starts destroying more of the city. He runs at her. Then he grabs a streetcar and then hits her with it. It's like, phew. That's when she's about to fire at Fango again, but Fango grabs a streetcar and throws it into Girlzilla's mouth, and she's like, and then she chokes on it, and then we cut to where her energy core is, and then it hits the energy core, and then it breaks it, and then it bursts, and then Girlzilla's done for it. And that's when we see, that's when we cut back to Mr. Lakey. He's like saying, he says, well, I can't believe it. Girlzilla, I hope she's doing good. That's when we see somebody show up. He says, Master, there's horrible news. He says, oh no, did she lose? He says, I'm afraid so. He says, don't worry, Lunerboonies. We can take care of this jerk. He says, come on, Princess Tally Mae. And here comes the behemoth lady. And yep, the master rides her through. And he gets on her. He says, I'm coming with you. He says, I'm gonna come with you. And you show Fango who's the real dude. And once they get sent, he says, here, you open the dream gate, and you open the dream gate so we can, and then, so me and Princess Tally Mae can get through the dream gate. And you activate the asteroid, cannon. And they get in, like, the asteroid egg cannon. That's when he rides her through the cannon. And then they go, and then it fires, goes like, and then into the air. And that's when we see Fango. We cut back to Fango, says, that's what. And everybody cheers for Fango when he defeats her. He says, now that is one crazy battle, but then all of a sudden this happens. That's when we see, when he returns to Green Ridge, that's when he sees an asteroid landing in the river. He says, whoa! We see he gets splashed, everyone gets splashed, his mecha suit gets splashed. He says, and then the Mr. Lakey says, "Great, now it's time to take up." Wait, hold on. Is this? I don't think this atmosphere's air is safe. And then that's when we see subtitles. We see that, like, well, that's when I show subtitles. We see that the behemoth lady tells the Mr. Lakey that it's safe that the atmosphere on Earth is very identical to the atmosphere on planet Lunerboon. And yeah, but she's not directly like talking. She's actually like, we hear her voice. Her voice is like just growl. It's like just a monster. It's kind of like she's just making noise to talk, and we see like subtitles. We see like subtitles under. That's why I put subtitles, so we can understand what she's saying. And the subtitles will say, "It's okay." It says, "Don't worry, this atmosphere is completely identical to ours. It's perfectly safe to breathe in." He says, "The air here is perfectly safe to breathe in." And then he says, "Okay." He says, "Oh, really? Cool. Well," we see he's nervous when he takes off his helmet. He says, "Huh. Hey, it's safe." And that's when we see that. And then the behemoth lady says, "See, told you." Well, the subtitle says she makes noise. Her noise tells him that, like, she makes noise, and then the subtitle says, "See, told you." And then they, we see that. And then Fango says, "Great, another Lunerboonie." And then he says, well, if it isn't Fango." And then that's when we see him. He says, "Who are you?" "I'm Mr. Lakey. And you're not gonna take out this Lunerboonie." He says, "Oh yeah? So you're behind this attack?" He says, "I am." He says, "Yeah." He says, "And you're gonna get it, man." He says, "Oh no, how about you're gonna get this?" And then he tries to use his rocket fist, but then the behemoth lady grabs it, goes like, he goes like, and he goes like, yeah. And he goes like, "What? This is crazy." Yep, this mecha suit isn't stronger than. Says, "You weren't gonna get away with this." That's when we see she's got like an elephant like roar. It's like an elephant and T-Rex sound together. And it's kind of like something like I don't know, like a something like that. And that's when we see the well, actually, I was saying that the behemoth lady has like she has like a deep voice that's it's so it's really loud. She's like, yeah. I probably should have added tusks to her because I wanted her to be like part elephant and part dinosaur. She roars. Her roar is like, it's like an elephant trumpet and T-Rex roar together. Yeah, it's kind of like this. It's like or I don't know. Fango tries to. He tries to shoot her with the arm cannon, like the arm rockets. It shoots, and then she does her roar. You're like, and then Fango's like, "Jeez!" and it pushes him. He covers his mecha suit, and him covers their ears. Everybody covers their ears, or sorta. Oh, they don't. He's like, "Ah!" Well, Fango covers his ears. We see the mecha suit. We see she grabs the mecha suit. Fango keeps trying to defend himself. And now he's using his fist. He's like fighting her, but we see that the mecha suit. We see that the Behemoth like pounds down, like pounds her fist onto the mecha suit. And he like grabs Fango's mecha suit and pushes it down. He's like, "Whoa!" And then he uses, and that's when she tosses him onto the ground. And then he gets up, and that's when he tries to use the energy beam on her. And so the mecha suit's mouth opens up, but once it fires, it doesn't affect her. She blocks, and that's when she grabs the cannon. She grabs the energy cannon that's when we see the mecha suit, like, and she charges at it, and then and once it fires, she grabs the cannon and pushes on it with her hand. She's like, her hand in her fist. She's like, and she's like, and it's like shooting. It's trying to shoot, but it's being blocked by her hand. She grabs it, and it's, and then we see Fango. We see her roaring, and as we see that the the explosion, like the energy core in the robot's getting ready to explode. And we see that Fango's alarm is going off. We see that. We see it's like going. We see that. We see that the robots going. We see the energy is about to burst. We see that. That's when we see the mecha suit. That's when you see that the mecha suit explodes, and it's like, it actually makes it, and she's roaring as the mecha suit's getting ready to explode, and she roars and as the mecha suit, and that's when the energy core bursts, and therefore the mecha suit explodes. And then after the explosion, she roars. She roars, and as it's getting ready to explode, and after she finishes, and as she's still roaring, the mecha suit explodes, and there's a whole bunch of energy. There's a huge energy cloud that comes out. And we see it makes this also. I wouldn't say an energy cloud. Let's just say there's a huge explosion. It's like black smoke. And her loud elephant, T-Rex sound. Yeah, she's like a hybrid creature. It's like an elephant and T-Rex person. And she's like, and then that's when we see the explosion from Fango's house, and then that's when we cut to Fango's house and see the explosion from his house, and that's when we see Dimey, Axel, and Austin, and Fangy, Forky, and Walkie. We also see Spoony and Crawley. We see that the explosion, they see that, once they see the explosion, first we see the explosion, that's when we see the explosion, then we see it from quite a few distances, and then we cut to Fango's, we cut to the, the house, we cut to Fango's house, which is also Fangy's house. Well, sort of. And then that's when we see them. We see that, Dimey, Axel, and Austin, and Fangy, Forky, and Walkie, and Spoony, and Crawley are like, holy cow! They were like, holy cow. They were just, shocked to see the explosion. And then, Spoony says, oh, what was that? And then Crawley says, Fango! He says, oh no, Fango! And then, and then that's when we see that the mecha suit is completely destroyed, and the only part that's remaining is the mecha suit's waist and legs. We see, or let's say that it's the head just exploded, or there's a hole in the chest and the head. Now the mecha suit's headless, and there's a hole in its chest and its back, it's like a hole, that's in its body. And we see that, and that's when we see the mecha suit fall into the water. And that was the first, like, Lunerboonie battle that Fango lost at him. And that's when we see, and after the mecha suit's body, like, destroyed body falls into the river, we see it falls into the river that the behemoth's in. She backs up just to watch it fall into the river, and she says, let's say it actually falls across a bridge and collapses it, and we see like a few cars like fall into the river along with it. And that's when we see her roar. Yeah. We see that they did just destroy a few cars before. Some of them exploded. Yeah, we see like a tanker truck explode in the battle as Fango's fighting, but I mean, well, that actually happened before in the battle. Like the battle as he tried. That was before he tried to destroy her with the energy beam, but she blocks the mouth beam, and then yeah, that was actually right before she did that. They destroyed quite a few cars and they exploded a tanker truck. But yeah, let's get back to the scene where Fango's mecha suit falls like into the river and across a bridge, and then a few cars falls in the water, and then we see cars fall into the water. We don't see any trucks though. Yeah, just cars. Maybe let's say there was a pickup truck on the bridge that fell, but no big trucks, just like cars and a pickup truck, and there was a van, just a small van, probably we could say a minivan that was on the bridge. Let's say Forky's car. We see the car, like the bridge fall, and the car falls into the water, and that's when we see Forky's car. We see Forky drive into the water. He's like, ah! And then he falls into the water. He says, let's see, I don't know what his like his car crash motto should be, but it's pretty funny. Yeah, he does his car crash motto. And then that's when we cut to Miss Behemoth. We see that Mr. Lakey is cheering. We cut to everybody shocked to see that Fango's mecha suit is destroyed, like, and then that's when we see Mr. Lakey cheering. He's like, he's laughing, he's cheering, he's like, woo! We did it, girl! And that's he's like laughing and cheering. We see the behemoth lady roar. And then we see, and it's so loud it breaks windows and and sets off car alarms, and everybody's like, ah! Everybody's covering their ears. They're like, ah! And then when she's done roaring, we see Mr. Lake say, "We did it! We did it! Princess Tally Mae," and he's just hugging her. He's like, "Oh, I love you so much." And then he says, that's when we see the governor say, "I really hate that guy." Or he doesn't say that. That's when we see Fango say, or that's when we see, let's say maybe Saber the Magnet says it, or maybe let's say, yeah, Saber the Magnet. He says, or like Bolton. No, let's say Hacker the robot was there, or maybe Roby was. He says, "I really hate that guy." I think maybe Saber should say it. No, let's say that Roby says it. Or no, Roby. We need like a more like normal accent, like a southern accent. Let's say that maybe let's say Boomer. Maybe let's say Sid the Rainbow says, "I really hate that guy." Or no, Sid's a little like smart. Maybe let's say maybe let's say Christian the paper says it. He says, I really hate that guy. And then that's when, yeah, Christian the paper says, I really hate that guy. And that's when that's when we see Saber the magnet say, me too. And then that's when Gunner says, oh, let's get the military to fight this. He says, that's when we see Dexter the rectangle. He says, let's get the military to fight this thing. Or maybe Terry the triangle. He says, let's get the military to fight this thing. And they fight. And they show up and start shooting. And he says, come on, call the tanks and the Humvees and fighter jets and helicopters. No, let's not say he just tells them to call all those. Let's just say they call the military and then they all show up and then they try to take care of her, but she says, he says, this is fun. He says, and as the mayor or the master's still cheering, we see the behemoth lady taps him on the shoulder. He says, what? And he says, what? She points at the military and says, oh no. We see they're shooting at her. We also see the laser, we see the cannon trucks and laser vans. He says, oh no. She says, that's when she has to fight. And we see she's too strong. First thing she does is she roars. Her shockwave pushes them across the street. And she knocks quite a few of them into a building. We see she gets the tanks and Humvees at first. That's when she strikes the aircraft. She's like, ugh! She's too strong. Fango says, he gets out of the... That's when we find out that his mecha suit is buried under the debris. After we see... let's say that a few of the fighter jets... Let's say she roared to knock the fighter jets out of the sky, and then the fighter jets hits. Like, one of them hits a helicopter, and then one crashes into an oil refinery, which causes an explosion. We see a helicopter land in the river, and we also see a fighter jet land, and then we also see a fighter jet land in the river, and a helicopter land in the river as well. And that's when we see her, and that's when we see some military boats. We see that there's like battleships in the water. Let's say that the river's pretty big. That's why they have like this. The reason why they have like a harbor and a lighthouse there is so they can know where the harbor is, and that's when she sees it. She says, "Get them!" That's when she's like, "It's time to attack." And that's when she's like, "What?" And then he says, and that's when we see Fango and his friends show up. We see that she's getting smashed. We see Fango shows up out of the ground. Everybody. That's when we see Fango unbury himself from the we see he was just buried under the debris of his mecha suit. Ugh. That was not fun, he said. He says, "Oh, says, I better sneak away without being caught. He sneaks his way through the battle without being seen by the behemoth lady. Okay, someone's coming in. And that's when Fango shows up. He says, you? I say, yeah. Everybody says, excuse me, coming through. He says, it's Fango. Or is that Fangy? He says, I'm Fango. I survived. Just don't shout my name. Because otherwise you're going to get the behemoth lady's attention. That's why Fango tells them not to shout his name. Everybody's surprised to see that he's alive. They say, he's alive! Cheer! He says, no, don't cheer. You're gonna get the attention of the behemoth lady, and then she's gonna try and destroy me. He says, oh. And everybody, we see the dude who says he's alive. He whispers, okay, sorry. He just says, okay, sorry. And everybody, and then they say it so quietly. He had to say it quiet enough so the master wouldn't, or so Mr. Lakey and the behemoth lady wouldn't attack them. He says, I gotta get in my stronger mecha suit. And then he says, and that's when we see her get knocked on the head by an antenna. He says, oh no. That's when we see, and then that's when the governor says, Fango, the only way how to defeat her is by using the landmarks. He says, well, what's going on? And who's the guy on top of her head? I know exactly who that is. It can't be. It's Mr. Lakey. He says, Mr. Lakey? Who's that? Is that who that guy is? He says, we known him for a long time. He wanted to be a part of us, but he wanted to be with us, and I was the one. He was just trying to help us, and all we did was let him down. He was a part of us. And well, if he's a part of us, then why is he attacking us with the Lunerboonies? Listen, he's doing it because he was just trying to help us. He was trying to, keep us together. He was trying to help us, and we let him down. All we did was let him down, as he was trying to help us and do all sorts of things. He just wanted to be a part of us, but all we did was let him down. He says, so that means he's not really evil, right? He says, no, he's just doing the evil stuff because we let him down. He says, and that's when we see, the master. He says, that's when we see the governor say, try not to destroy him, though. The only way how you can defeat this, he says, that's when Fango learns he's not pure evil. The strong ones let him down and they didn't mean for him to do this. He says, when you try, and the only way how you can defeat that monster he's on is by using all the landmarks. Any structure, all the structures, because she's the strongest one. That's use a whole as many vehicles as you can. Let's say he uses all the landmarks. He says, okay, here it comes. That's when he gets in his mecha suit. He says, you asked for it, miss. He uses everything. Well, he only uses the landmarks. And then that's when he says, that's when he rushes to his bigger mecha suit. He says, guys, I need your help. We gotta take the governor of Strongling says it's the only way out to defeat that monster is by yeah, it's by using the landmarks of strong ones. And then that's when Spoonie says, "Are you crazy?" Yeah, and that, well, yeah, we see that Crawley says, "Fango, you're alive! Thank goodness you're okay." He says, "Oh, Fango, thank goodness you're okay." What? Did she destroy your mecha suit? Yeah, they ask if his mecha suit was destroyed. He says, "I'm afraid so." That's when we see him. "I need your help." And yeah, and that's when he tells them the only way how to defeat the Lunerboonies. He says, "Let's get in." He says, "Well, all right, man." That's when we see them. He tells them. That's when he tells them that he needs their. That Fango tells Spoonie and Crawley that he needs their help, and he. Oh, sorry about that. So, yeah, he.
Fango works in the building, but my mom's outside.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Fango is. He was. So yeah. He was. So his friends decides to help him, and yeah, he gets help. He says, "We're here to help Fango," and then they get in their mecha suits. They get in the biggest. He said, "You gotta get in the strongest mecha suit you can get in, because these things are tough. They're even tougher than me." He says they get in the strongest mecha suit. And we see this mecha suit is huge. We see they are in a huge mecha suit. It's like currently her size, the behemoth lady's size. He says, "The only way we can do this is by using landmarks." That's when we see we see Mr. Lakey. He says, "Go, Princess Tally Mae! We are going good," he says. He says, "Let's get this dude. Here, okay, first let's grab a landmark. Quick, grab a landmark." He says, "Okay." And then once they get in their mecha suits, and we see Fango says, "Now quick, grab a landmark. and spare that lady with it." He says, "Okay." It's actually kind of funny. This is like the most exciting part of this episode. So when he has to get her with landmarks. He says, "Huh." And that's when he grabs. That's when he grabs. We see Spoonie and Crawley. We see actually all his friends grabs a landmark. We see Doggy, Rolly, and QB. Yeah, they get in. Let's say those were like the other 5 of Fango's friends that got in and had to use landmark. They get in. Let's say that they used they used all the landmarks, and they even used. He says he uses all the landmarks. He even uses and they use all the landmarks. They use their the ships. They use Semi-Truck City's landmarks. They use phone bays and Webertons and West Arlo's, and we see they use all of the landmarks and Green Ridge. Well, that's actually the last thing they use. Those are the last thing. It's then they use they use the landmarks in the city of maybe they use the landmarks in Rosedale and Gluesburg. They use the landmarks in the city of gotta think of what my cities are. It's called let me see. Be right back. Yeah. Okay, I'm back. I found the cities. They were in my room. So yeah. Yeah, he uses all the cities, and yeah, they use all the landmarks in Green Ridge, and let's say you save Green Ridge for last. They use all the ones in Crown Rapids and Penford and Box Park and St. Aubern and Hammer Valley and Semi-Truck City, and they use Sockgate's landmarks. They use Newworth and Fort Stone. They use Fort Stones and Newworths. They use Webertons and West Arlo's. They use all the landmarks in Phone Bay and Fan Point and Cransboro and Cookie Brook and they use all the landmarks and I think that's all the big cities I have. Maybe let's do like all the cities, like they use all the ones in Crown Rapids, Penford, Box Park, St. Aubern, Hammer Valley, Semi-Truck City, and Sockgate. They use all their skyscrapers in Fort Worths and Newworths, Webertons, West Arlo's, Rosedales, and Glewisburg, and Phone Bays, and Fan Points, and Cransboro, and Cookie Brooks. They also do like a few of they also use a lot of the left turn signal water towers. They use the famous, like all of Strong Lungs' famous restaurants, like Rowan's Donut. They use Rowan's Donuts. Like they use they use all their cathedrals, including the dome ones. They use like the Taj Mahal. How should I pronounce it? Maybe the Taj Mahal. Maybe the Taj Mahal. Yeah, it's a parody of the Taj Mahal. We got the Waffle Tower. We got which is in an Eiffel Tower parody, based off of the Eiffel Tower. We got Big Bang, based off of Big Ben, which is in Big Bang. Yeah, the Waffle Tower is in it's in Rosedale, and we got the Semi-Truck Sky Tree, which is not really based off of the Tokyo Sky Tree. It's based off of Tokyo Tower. They also used Semi-Truck Tower. They used Bay Link Tower. They used they used the Sky Crown, which is the tower in Crown Rapids. It's a really big city. Yes, Crown Rapids is a really big city, and they got the crown. Yeah, it's the crown tree. Or we could call it the Crown Rapids Sky Tree. That's what they use, the Crown Rapids Sky Tree. And it's not really based off of the Tokyo Sky Tree, but it is very tall. They use the River Bay Tower, which is in Cransboro. They used the Capitol Building, which is in Greenridge, and they use they got the Space Noodle, which is based off of the Space Needle, and that's what that green tower is, and yeah, it's in Fort Stone. We got the Gateway. We got the Crown Rapids Arch, which is like based off of the St. Louis Arch, and it's in Crown Rapids. And then we got a Horn. It's not Hornview. It's what tower is it? I'm trying to think what it is. It's the tower in it's pretty big. It's like, it's Fan Point. It's called. We got Fan Point. We got Keystone Tower, which was in Penford. Yeah, he used the same tower he used to defeat the elementals. He also used the other tower, whatever I called it, or I think I gave it a name, I'm not sure. But yeah, he just uses all the landmarks. He uses all their famous ships, and he used their very special trains. He uses all their trains. And let's say they used all their vehicles, and they used all their landmarks, including their very famous oil. They even used the lighthouse, like Green Ridge's lighthouse. It's actually a really famous lighthouse. If you're wondering why Greenridge has a lighthouse, even though it's not a coastal city, it's got a, or let's say it doesn't really have a lighthouse. It's just, let's say Crown Rapids does, because it's the coastal city, and it's we see the, let's say it's the one that has a lighthouse. It's like in the, I know I'd be thinking that the Greenridge should be like in the very middle, but let's say it's like a few miles away from Crown Rapids, which is near the coast, and that's when we see Fango and his friends. We see they grab all the landmarks, and that's when we see them throw all of them at the behemoth lady, and aka Princess Tallyman. She does like an uh-oh sound, and then that's when we see Mr. Lakey jump off. He says, "Oh no!" Yeah, he says, "Oh no!" And then he jumps off her head and he just sky dives off of her head. And that's when we see all the structure and like all the landmarks hit her. And that's when there's like a pile. And we see that that's when hold on. So yeah, okay, I'm back now. So yeah, after we see, he says, "Ah!" Oh, he says, "At least I'm okay." And then that's when we see the governor say, "Oh, well, thank goodness he is." And that's when we see Saber saying, "What?" Or that's when we see Boomer say, "What are you talking about? That guy is bad." And then the governor explains it to everyone. He says, Whoa, no, he's not. He's not. He says, don't. What do you mean he's not? He was just destroying our city with with all the Lunerboonies, including that one. He says, well, listen, before you refuse to believe me, let me explain. This guy used to be that guy who was on top of that girl's head. That guy used to be a part of us, and he is doing. And the reason why he was destroying the city, the reason why he was attacking us, is because I let him down. He was just trying to help me. I wasn't being too kind about it, and so all I did, I just let him down, and so he got mad, and now he's attacking us. And that's when he says, good, and then everybody says, oh, okay, and then that's when they understand. He says, and that's when we see Fango say, woo, we did it, and then the Mr. Lakey says, jeez, I don't think I can get mad this time, because not even I can defeat the strong ones. Ah! Oh! Oh! Ah! 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 Well, good thing that water cushioned the impact. Or let's say he landed on a mattress. He says his wing hits an antenna. He's like, ah, and then he lands on a mattress, and he's like, whoa! Yeah, they were carrying a mattress. Ugh. He says, ah! They run from him. He says, well, that was stupid. I should have watched where I was going. He says, I probably should have watched where I was going. He says, and then that's when he sees his girlfriend. He finds the behemoth lady. He says, oh no. After we see her badly injured by the landmarks, we see her fall back and she falls back into the water, and she falls back in the water, and then she's like, and we see her lying in the water, like in the river, and she's just completely, and she can't swim very well. Yeah, I mean she can swim. She just got injured, so she can't quite swim at the moment. Yeah, let's say Greenridge does have a lighthouse. It's just for the big river, it's so they can get to the harbor. She's like, she's saying like, Master, help me. That's when we see. That's when we see. And that's when we see. And that, yeah, sorry, it's, that's when we see Fango say, "We did it, man." He says, "Guys, I say Fango deserves his final reward." Fangi says, "We did it, man! We did it!" And then we hear the master. That's when we hear the people who was like affiliated with the person. Oh, not person. It's let me think. It's Fango. Well, not Fango. Well, that's not Fango, but yeah, it was like affiliated with Mr. Lakey. Sorry, I was just thinking. So yeah, Mr. Lakey. They were affiliated with Mr. Like the dudes who were affiliated with Mr. Lakey radioed him. They asked him if he was okay. He said he got mad at them somehow, and he said, "You're fired!" And then they said, and then they went like, "Oh man," they said they just stopped radioing him. We cut to them and they were like, "Oh man," and then that's when we see. And that's when all I can do is this. And then that's when we see the roaster. That's when we see the roaster say, "Send me through the dream gate." And then they do. And then after we see Mr. Lakey. Yeah, Mr. Lakey's like, we see that the roaster crash lands near the Mr. Lakey, and he says, "Ah, roaster, what are you doing here?" "I came to see you." "I don't. No, man, you were no match for Fango. Get out of here." And he says, "Oh man." And then he just sits by a lake, and that was like, he was like sitting by a lake in Star Lake, like on the other side of Star Lake, not being seen. Yeah, let's say he was attacking Star Lake. Let's say the roaster was attacking Star Lake. Then he puts a little message in a bottle. We see he can create things, and he creates a message in a bottle, and then throws it to Star Lake. He throws it. Let's say he just throws it. He goes like, whoop, and we see, and then that's when we see it land in front of somebody. "Whoa, what's this?" He says, "We gotta show this." When they read it, "We gotta show this to the mayor of Star Lake. We gotta show this to the mayor." He just shows it, yeah, the Star Lake mayor. And then that's when they run to him. But we don't show them. But we don't cut to them showing it to him. We just cut back to Fango and the master. Fango already knows. Let's say Fango saw the roaster, and he was like, yeah, he's asked if, he said he could, like, still try his best to fight Fango. He said, "You're not fighting Fango, you're no match." He tells, and then the roaster gets told he's no match for Fango, and then and he gets told to get out here. Huh. And that's when the governor says, "Oh boy, it's Mr. Lakey." He says, "Sir, I understand you were doing this because you were upset." "Huh? Really? I came to apologize for letting you down. I'm sorry I let you down. I just should have been more helpful to you as well. You know." Yep, and that's when they realize, he says, "Oh boy, well, I guess Fango really does deserve his final reward then." That's when he says, oh. And then it was, that's when we see, Fango, fix the, and that's when we see Fango get his final reward after he parks. Whoa, before you give me my final reward, I gotta park my mecha suit back where it was. That's when the Mr. Lakey says on through a radio, he says, "Guys, I am sorry I terrorized your land with with the Lunerboonies. I just want to say, I know it was a big deal, but I was just doing it because I was upset that that your governor let me down." And then they just cheered for him. And then they cheered for him. They said, and they all accepted his apology. And then Fango's, and then once Fango gets back, he says, "I'm back," and he gets his mecha suit. And then he gets his reward, his final reward. He says, Mr. Lake, he says, "Wait, he says, "Here, I'll give you a he says, yeah, no." He says, "Here," and then Mr. Lake, he says, "Here, I'll give Fango his reward, but I'm gonna give Fango his reward." And that's when we see him give Fango, he says, "Here," and he says, Fango says, "Wait, aren't you a bad guy?" "Oh, right." He says, "Wait, aren't you?" He says, "Thanks, Mr. Lakey." And then that's when we see Mr. Lakey is now a good guy. He used to be evil, but now he's a good guy. And that's when we see, and then we see Fango. Yeah. And that's when we see everybody cheering for Fango. And that's when we see Fangy, Forky, and Walkie, and Spoony, and Crawley, and we see Dimey, Axel, and Austin. Fango says, "Yeah, man, that's the one I want to see." And we see they're just so cheerful, and they were pretty darn stinking crazy. And then that's when we see Fango's just smiling as we see his friends are with him. And that's when we come to and that's when we hear Fango's voice in the background. We come to and that's when we cut to them back at that's when we cut to their house, and we hear Fango's voice and we hear Fango as the narrator. We hear Fango narrate, and he's saying, "And that was the story of me versus the Lunerboonies. I finally learned that the reason why the Lunerboonies was being sent to Stronglongs was because the person who was sending them was a part of us and was let down because the he explained, he says, and that's when I learned why the Lunerboonies were being sent, and I was able to defeat them." Or I don't know what Fango should say. He just says that. He just says that was the story of me versus. He says, "And that was the story of me versus the Lunerboonies. I learned why they were being sent here to Stronglongs on Earth." Or no, he just says, "I realized they were he just says, let's say he says, I learned why the Lunerboonies were being sent here to Strong. He says, he just said here. He says, I learned why the Lunerboonies were being sent to Strongwongs, and then he says, and I realized that the person who was sending them wasn't really evil. Yeah. He says, and the final battle was my luckiest day. I did a gravestone. He says, I showed off my rewards, and I showed off my history. Yeah, he says, first he says, and that was the story of me versus the Lunerboonies. I learned why they were being sent to Strongwongs, and I heard the backstory. And I showed off my rewards and showed off some history. Because I'm Fango. And that's, and that's when we see, but as he's saying it, as we zoom in, we cut to their house as we're slowly zooming in a little bit, and that's when we cut to the inside of their house, and we do like a pan. We see all, like, a lot of their friends over, and then we're just panning, or the camera is like panning down from the upstairs, and then it pans down to Fango on the couch, and he's saying, and that's when we cut to a closer, and that's when we see him and his friends, and that's when he says, "'Cause I'm Fango." Once he gets to the "'cause I'm Fango" part, when he gets to that part of his dialogue, you see that he looks, and we see they jump, and then that's when we see a freeze screen, and they say, "Yeah!" Yeah, we see he says, "That's right."
Wrap it up.
And then he says, and that's when we wrap, and that's when the episode wraps it up, and that's, they say, and then that's when we see the end credits. We see, like, there's all, like, we see, like, pictures of them, we see, let's see, it's like a song, yeah. This song is crazy. This is, I wonder what the song should be. Yeah, so yeah, we see all sorts of pictures of Fango. We learned why Fango, he learns why the Lunerboonies were being sent, and this is, we see the end credits. We see what he's doing we see all the stuff Fango's doing. We see pictures of him, like, right next to the credits. We see, you know how, like, some pictures, like how, like, some episodes, like a final episode or something, or like the end of a movie would show, like, pictures of Strongwongs, and, like, show, not only is it just the credits, it's the characters. You see, like, pictures that has the characters in them next to the credits, and, like, something like that. That's kind of it's funny, but it's also a good idea for the show. We see, like, everything that they're doing, and that's when we see that they're saying, let's say there's a song, let's see, I'm not sure what the song should be called, but it's pretty darn catchy song. And then that's when we see, or let's say we see, like there's, like, credits, like first we see, like, the credits, like, everywhere.
Yes.
We see, this isn't your story, this is my story, sorry about that, guys. Let's say before we get to those credits, we see, like, there's, like credits, like, everywhere. We see, like, let's say, like, the camera's, like going all sorts of places, and then that's when we do, like animated credits, and, like, we do it for, like, a few minutes, and then after that we see Fango together, hanging out together, and then after we see the animated credits for, like, a few minutes. That's when we cut to these slideshow credits with pictures of Fango and his friends in them, and then we see all what everybody's doing. And then after those credits, we see there's actually a post-credit scene. We see Toby going for a walk around. He's like walking down the freeway like he's a hobo, sort of. He sees the welcome to Cransborough sign, he says, huh, he says, well, that's a cool, he says, oh, I'm entering Cransborough, I see. Or no, he just already knows. Let's say he's walking down the street and he's like in Cransborough walking down the freeway, and once he notices, he sees one of the energy cores from one of the Lunerboonies that had an energy core. He says, oh look, it's a Lunerboonie energy core. I wonder what that's, I wonder which Lunerboonie that came from. I absolutely forgot. But as he was thinking, we see that the energy core actually heals up, like the crack in the broken core actually heals up, and then it starts glowing, and then Toby's like, uh-oh. And then we see that and that's when we cut to the Star Trek Pictures logo, he says. And that's when and that's when the episode's like completely done, after the post-credit scene. And that's how the episode truly ends.